Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
I am. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so today we're going to the lush forests of Taiwan.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at these incredible creatures called red giant flying squirrels.
Oh, wow. Those are cool.
Yeah, they're really neat. And we have this research article from way back in 1993. It's called Reproductive Biology of the Red Giant Flying Squirrel, Petrista in Taiwan.
Okay. Interesting.
It's from the Journal of Mammalogy.
Okay, so it should be pretty reliable.
Yes. And, well, what really caught my eye was this one incredible fact about these squirrels.
Oh, what's that?
They only have one pup at a time.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah.
Huh. I would have thought with creatures that big that they'd have, more babies at once.
Right. It's really strange.
Like, well, why would they just have one?
Yeah, well, just one. That's what we're going to be looking at today.
Very interesting. I'm excited to hear more.
Yeah. So to get started, can you give us a quick overview of these squirrels? Like, what are they like?
Sure. So imagine a squirrel, right? But it's huge.
Okay, so like a super squirrel.
Yeah, a super squirrel. And they're nocturnal. They're most active at night.
Oh, so you probably wouldn't even see them during the day.
You probably wouldn't. They're probably sleeping in their little tree cavities.
So they live in trees.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they're arboreal. They spend their time up in the trees.
Okay, that makes sense. So what do they eat up there?
Well, get this. Over 55% of their diet is leaves.
Really?
Yeah, they're basically leaf-eating machines.
Wow, like a salad buffet in the trees?
Exactly.
I guess that makes sense with all the trees around.
Yeah, and another thing the research mentions is they don't have a lot of predators.
Oh, really? Why not?
Well, it looks like a combination of habitat destruction and hunting has really reduced their predator populations in Taiwan.
Wow. That's kind of sad, but I guess it's good for the squirrels.
Right. But it's all connected to that one baby thing we were talking about.
Really? How so?
So this goes back to something called the slow life history theory. Basically, if you're an animal with not a lot of predators and plenty of food, you don't need to have a ton of babies to ensure your survival.
Oh, that makes sense. You can just focus on having one really healthy baby.
Exactly. They're playing the long game.
Interesting. Okay, so let's dig into some more details about their breeding habits. This research was done in Taiwan, right?
Yep. In the hardwood forests near Sunmin Village in the south of Taiwan.
Okay, and it took place over an entire year.
That's right. From December 1981 to November 1982.
Wow, so they really got to see a full cycle of the squirrel's life.
Yeah, a whole year of data collection. And they learned some pretty interesting things about the differences between male and female squirrels. Like their size, for example.
Oh, right. I remember reading about that. The females are bigger than the males, aren't they?
Yes. Adult females are significantly heavier than males.
How much heavier are we talking about?
Well, on average, females weigh about 1,334 grams.
Okay.
And males weigh about 12,260.
Huh. So that's a pretty noticeable difference.
It is, and it actually becomes even more pronounced during certain months.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about the males? What did the researchers learn about their, their side of things?
Well, the interesting thing is that males can reproduce for almost the entire year.
Seriously?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, they're always ready.
Except for February.
February.
Yeah, it seems like they take a little break in February.
Okay, so 11 months out of the year, they're good to go.
Exactly. But there are definitely peak times when they're, extra ready.
I bet. Like when they're most fertile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The research found 2 peak breeding seasons.
Okay, when are those?
March through June,
Uh-huh.
and then October to November.
So spring and fall.
You got it. And it turns out their bodies are actually primed for those specific times.
How so?
Well, during those peak seasons, their tests are at their maximum weight,
Oh, I see.
and they're producing the most sperm.
So it's like their bodies are saying, okay, it's time to make some babies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfectly timed for spring and fall.
Wow, that's fascinating. I also remember reading something about how their tests actually go through cycles.
Yes, that's right.
It's like they're constantly changing gears.
They go through phases of being fully functional,
Uh-huh.
then they degenerate.
What? Like they shrink?
Kind of.
Wow.
And then they redevelop again.
So it's like a whole process of renewal.
You could say that.
Interesting. So they're not always in, peak breeding mode?
Not all the time. Just when they need to be.
Makes sense. So, okay, we've talked about the males. What about the females?
Well, unlike the males, who are basically ready to go most of the year, females have 2 very distinct breeding seasons.
Okay, so 2 for the females, multiple for the males. Got it.
Yep.
And when are the females' breeding seasons?
So they have one in the winter, from December to February,
Uh-huh.
and then another one in the summer, from June to August.
Okay, so winter and summer. Interesting.
And here's the thing. Only about half of the adult females actually get pregnant each season.
Really? Only half? Wow, that's a lot lower than I would have expected.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. It makes you wonder what factors determine which females breed and which ones don't.
Yeah, why would only half of them get pregnant? Is it something about their age? Their size?
That's a great question, and one that the researchers didn't have a clear answer for. They found that there wasn't a significant difference in size between breeding and non-breeding females.
Huh. So size doesn't seem to be the deciding factor.
Not that we know of.
So it's a bit of a mystery. But one thing we do know is that when those females get pregnant, they don't have big families.
Oh, right. Back to the one baby thing.
Yeah, remember the average litter size is just a little over one pup.
Tiny families.
Yeah, it was 1.04 pups on average, to be exact.
Wow. And did that change between the breeding seasons?
Nope, no difference between seasons.
What about first-time moms versus experienced moms?
No difference there either.
Wow. So whether it's winter or summer, first-time mom or not, it's basically just one pup per litter.
Pretty much, yeah. And you might think that this small litter size would mean they have low reproductive success.
Right. You'd think so.
But that's not the case at all. They're actually really efficient at making sure that single pup survives.
Oh, how so?
Their prenatal mortality rate, which is the rate at which fertilized eggs fail to develop, is only about 7.4%.
Wow, it's pretty low.
Yeah,
So those single pups are very likely to make it to term.
it seems like it. Do we know how long their pregnancies last?
Well, the research estimated that the gestation period is at least 45 days.
Okay.
They figured that out based on the size of the embryos they observed.
And how big are these embryos?
Well, the largest one they found weighed 56.3 grams.
Wow, that's a pretty big embryo for a squirrel.
Right. They come out ready to go.
Yeah.
So we've talked about these red giant flying squirrels in Taiwan, but what about other flying squirrel species?
Yeah, are they all like this? With these, unusual breeding habits?
Well, breeding patterns can definitely vary a lot depending on the species.
Okay.
And also where they live, like whether it's a tropical or temperate climate.
Uh-huh.
But one thing that does seem to be consistent across all Pederista species is that small litter size.
So it's not just the red giant flying squirrels in Taiwan, it's all their relatives too.
It seems that way, yeah.
Huh. So small families must be a successful strategy for them.
I guess so.
But we still haven't answered that big question. What triggers their breeding seasons in the first place?
Yeah. Why those specific times of year?
Right, like what gets their hormones going?
Well, the researchers looked at a few possibilities.
Okay.
Temperature and rainfall didn't seem to be the main factors
Uh-huh.
because breeding was happening across different seasons.
Yeah, so it can't be that.
Right. But they did think one thing might be the main driver.
What's that?
Photoperiod.
Photoperiod?
Yeah, the amount of daylight.
Oh, so like the changing length of days.
Exactly.
I see. But how would that affect when they breed?
Well, it's actually pretty common for a lot of mammals. As the days get longer or shorter, it triggers hormonal changes.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
It basically kicks off their reproductive cycles.
Huh, so it's like their bodies are in tune with the sun.
That's one way to put it.
Cool. But it's probably not just the photoperiod, right?
You're right. The researchers thought food availability might also play a role.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. If there's not enough food around, they might not want to have babies.
Exactly. And they even suggested that some plant chemicals might be involved too.
I wonder how that would work.
It's definitely an area for more research, but it's probably a combination of factors that all come together at the right time.
Yeah, it's probably not just one simple thing. Okay, now before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I wanted to bring up one last interesting detail. Remember that weight difference between the sexes? Heavier females and lighter males.
Yes. What about it?
Well, I was thinking maybe it's not just a random difference. Maybe it's actually connected to how much energy they're using for reproduction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like maybe the females are heavier because they're the ones carrying and nursing the pups.
That would make sense. They need more resources to support the baby.
Exactly. And maybe the males are lighter because they're spending more energy searching for mates and competing with other males.
Yeah, all that gliding around and showing off.
Right. It must burn a lot of calories.
It probably does. But yeah, that's definitely something that would need more research to confirm.
Definitely. Okay, so, wow, we've learned so much about these red giant flying squirrels already.
We have.
What stands out to you the most so far?
I think I'm most intrigued by that mystery of why only half the females get pregnant.
Yeah, me too. What do you think is going on there?
I don't know, but I'm really curious to find out. What about you?
Hmm. I'm really fascinated by those weight fluctuations.
Yeah, it would be cool to see more research on that, how energy use relates to breeding and mating behavior.
Exactly. Lots to ponder.
Let's take a break and then come back for part 2.
Sounds good. All right, so we're back and ready to keep exploring these fascinating red giant flying squirrels.
Yeah, they're pretty remarkable.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about how habitat loss and hunting have reduced their predator populations, right?
Right.
But I'm kind of curious, what happens when you remove predators from an ecosystem like this?
Well, that's a great question, and it really highlights how everything in nature is interconnected. When predator populations decline, it can throw off the balance of the entire food web.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. Predators help to keep prey populations in check, which in turn affects the plants and resources those prey animals rely on.
So it's all about maintaining that delicate balance.
Exactly.
Okay, so if we take the predators out of the equation, what happens to the prey, like our red giant flying squirrels?
Well, in theory, their populations could increase dramatically. Yeah. With fewer predators to worry about, they'd have a higher chance of survival. And that could lead to increased competition for resources, like those leaves they love so much.
Oh, I see. So too many squirrels, not enough leaves.
Right. And over time, it could even change the types of plants that dominate the forest.
Wow, so it's not just about the squirrels themselves, it's about the entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. Everything is connected.
Okay, so we've talked about the ecological side of things. What about the biological stuff? The research really went into detail about their reproductive organs, right?
They did.
What kinds of things did they find?
Well, for example, remember how we talked about those peak breeding seasons for males?
Yeah, March to June and October to November.
Right. Well, the researchers were able to pinpoint those specific time frames by looking at changes in the male's testes.
Oh, right, like their size and weight and how much sperm they were producing.
Exactly. They were able to track those changes over time and correlate them with breeding behavior.
Interesting. So it was more than just observation. They had concrete evidence to support their findings.
Exactly. Now, on the female side, they observed similar changes in the ovaries.
Oh, right. There were 2 peaks in ovarian weight that lined up with the breeding seasons, winter and summer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the reproductive systems are in sync, even though the males and females have very different breeding patterns.
It is pretty amazing. But remember that finding about only half the females getting pregnant each season?
Oh, yeah, that's still a big mystery.
It is. What do you think is influencing those pregnancy rates?
Well, it could be a lot of things. Maybe it has to do with their overall health or their hormone levels, or perhaps it's related to external factors like food availability or competition between females.
It's like there's this whole selection process going on that we don't fully understand.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Definitely. But it looks like those small litter sizes are working for them, right?
That's right. Remember the slow life history theory.
Oh, yeah. So species with low predation and lots of food don't need to have tons of babies.
Exactly. They can focus on the quality of their offspring rather than quantity. And remember, their prenatal mortality rate is really low, too.
Right. Only about 7%.
So they're very efficient at ensuring those single pups survive.
And they have those cozy tree cavities to raise them in, safe from predators.
Yeah, they've created a pretty ideal environment for raising their young.
But this research really highlights how delicate that balance is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Even small changes can have a big impact on these squirrels and the entire forest ecosystem.
Okay, so before we move on to our final thoughts, what aspects of this research are you still most curious about?
I'm really curious about those factors that might be determining which females get pregnant. It would be fascinating to learn more about that selection process, whatever it might be.
Yeah, me too. What about you? Well, I'm still really intrigued by those weight fluctuations between the sexes. Like, I'd love to know more about how energy use is related to reproduction and mating behavior.
Yeah, that would be interesting. There's so much more to explore. Why don't we take a moment to think about those unanswered questions, and then we'll come back for part 3 to wrap everything up.
Sounds great. I can't wait. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive on these incredible red giant flying squirrels.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. I feel like we've learned so much about them just from this one research paper.
It's amazing what you can find when you really dig into these scientific studies.
Absolutely. We've explored their unique breeding habits
Right.
and their amazing adaptations to their environment.
It really makes you appreciate the complexity of nature, doesn't it?
It really does. And it makes you realize that Conservation isn't just about protecting one species.
Right. It's about protecting entire ecosystems.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring us back to a question we touched on earlier.
Okay.
What are the conservation implications of what we've learned about these red giant flying squirrels?
Well, for one thing, knowing they have such small litter sizes
Right.
and specific breeding seasons can help us figure out when they're most vulnerable.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, imagine if logging or development happened during a peak breeding season.
Oh, wow. That could be really bad.
Yeah, it could wipe out a whole generation.
Wow. Okay. So timing is really important for conservation efforts?
It is. We also need to think about their diet, remember?
Oh, right. All those leaves.
Exactly. When we're thinking about reforestation efforts,
Yeah.
we have to make sure we're planting the right kinds of trees.
The ones they like to eat.
Exactly, to give them the best chance of survival. Because conservation has to be based on science.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
not enough to just say, we want to protect this species.
Yeah.
We need to understand their life cycle,
Right.
their habitat needs.
And how we can help them thrive.
Precisely. It's like we need a roadmap for how to protect them. And this research provides that.
Okay. So as we finish up here, what's the main message you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is just a sense of wonder about the natural world
Oh, I like that.
and, appreciating how everything is interconnected.
And I'd add to that, just thinking about how our actions impact these amazing creatures.
Right. Even the little things we do.
Exactly. Whether it's supporting sustainable practices or just spreading awareness about biodiversity.
Yeah, we all have a role to play in protecting our planet. So as you go about your day, remember those red giant flying squirrels?
Gliding through those Taiwanese forests.
Exactly. A symbol of the beauty and fragility of our natural world.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.